All right, and I'm going to welcome everybody to our very first professional development session for our OSTCP grant. Today's May 19th, if you can believe it. So I feel like this year is just really chugging right along here. So we only have one of our 3 sites on the call today. So I may get us started and then I'll send a quick email out to people to just say, hey, do you remember that we're doing this today? Perhaps they can jump on. With that being said, I do think that it would be nice to go ahead and start with some introductions. Our presenting team today is actually from the Iowa Department of Education's Career and Technical Education Bureau. And if I've misquoted that, please correct me. So I'm actually going to start with Dennis, if you don't mind introducing yourself, and then I'll let your team members introduce themselves as well.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Dennis Harden, and I am the Bureau Chief for Career and Technical Education in the Division of Community Colleges and Workforce Preparation at the department.
Thank you.
Morning, everyone. My name is Katie Blatnick-Gagne, and I am an education consultant. And here at the Bureau, I oversee family and consumer sciences education, along with career and academic planning.
My name is Christy Valesky. I'm also an education consultant at the Department of Education. I oversee business and marketing educators, work-based learning, including the Iowa Intermediary Network.
Thank you. And our site that's represented today is Council Bluffs. So I'm going to let Nikki and Paul introduce themselves to everyone on the call today. Nikki, why don't you go ahead and go first, please?
Good morning. I'm Nikki Clausen, and I'm the 21st Century Program Director at the Council Bluffs School District.
Thanks, Nikki. And now Paul?
Paul Hantz. I am the Career Education Coordinator for Council Bluffs Schools. And I'll be honest, when I first logged into the meeting, I saw Dennis, Katie, and Christy. I thought, oh, am I in the right meeting? So I'm glad to see I'm at the right meeting and they're on this. So this is absolutely fantastic. So, and then I'll let Delisa is new to the group. So I'll let Delisa introduce herself.
Yeah, and do I have Delisa in the call today? I don't believe I do yet, Paul.
Oh.
Yeah,
okay.
I do not have her in the call, but if she comes in, we'll absolutely have her introduce herself a little bit.
Let me run down the hall real quick and see if she's there. You did send her. I thought you sent her an invite, right? Okay.
I did, yes.
Okay,
yes.
I'm going to run down there.
While you're double checking, while you're double checking that, I'll invite Vic to introduce himself next.
Okay.
Vic Jarvis, Iowa Department of Ed, and I'm the manager of this grant.
Thanks, Vic. And then last but not least, the rest of the Iowa After School Alliance team. So Brittany, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Brittany Samuelson, and I'm the network coordinator of the Iowa After School Alliance.
And then Emily.
Hi, Emily Harris with the Iowa After School Alliance. I work with Brittany and Crystal, and I oversee most of policy and communications.
All right. And Paul is back. Were you able to find Delisa?
Yes, actually, I'm not making this up. She's on the other line with Greer Sisson talking about some registered apprenticeships. And so she says, as soon as I'm done with this call, I'll hop on. So she'll get on when she's done.
Perfect. Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. So with that being said, I am going to turn it over to Dennis, Katie, and Christy, and they can go ahead and start the presentation. And then, like I said, I will just do a quick check-in with the other sites to give them that nudge to remember that we're doing this training this morning. So thank you so much, everyone.
Well, again, good morning, everyone. And we are very pleased to be here to share some information on career and technical education with you. And we're thrilled to be partners with you all in this particular endeavor. My slides aren't moving. Let's see. Oops. Sorry, I'm having technical difficulty here. Let's try this again. Here, let's try this. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. For our agenda today, we divided our presentation into 3 sections. Katie's going to start our presentation with the individual career and academic planning, or ICAP, because we thought this would be very valuable information for you all to have in your work. And then I'm going to give an overview of Iowa career and technical education, because we weren't sure everyone that was involved with this project was totally familiar with career and technical education in Iowa. So we thought it would be good to give you some information about that. And I've got some slides from our annual report for secondary career and technical education. So I hope the data part isn't too boring and such, but wanted to share that with you. And then Christy is going to cover work-based learning. And what we'll do is, after each section, we will take questions after each section. And then, of course, at the very end of the presentation, we'll be happy to take any additional questions that you might have. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Katie. And Katie, I guess I'll just advance the slides as you tell me to.
Sounds good. Thank you, Dennis. So when we take a look at overall career exploration, one of the components that we work with a lot in Iowa is our individual career and academic plans. In Iowa, those start at the 8th grade and move with a student as they go through their high school timeframe. So as Dennis moves to the next slide, we're going to see a couple important components within this area. In 2016, ICAP was really revisioned, and we have 2 goals that have been created out of that particular system. The first is to make sure that we focus on student experiences and the preparation for post-secondary success, whatever that might be, from going to a 4-year university, entering into a community college system, going into the military, whatever those options are, that they have experiences that give them the opportunities and exposure so they know what they want to do as they continue on. And the other key component is to make sure that we are providing a holistic and integrated approach in delivering this career guidance to students, and that we're providing opportunities that are meaningful and have purpose behind what we are doing. Through CTE redesign, we are taking a look at college and career readiness through thoughtful career guidance, and then also purposeful academic and technical planning processes. So ICAP really becomes the first opportunity for many students to think about, what is that true career exploration going to look like, especially as I get into high school, and where might we be able to connect to some career-driven opportunities? And many times CTE tends to be that area where students are going to get those opportunities. Next slide, please. Throughout ICAP, another component that we want to look at is really taking an idea and having that, what is equality versus equity? We talk a lot within the career and technical education realm of equity and access. So ensuring that you offer those holistic and authentic opportunities, we want to make sure that we have equity where each student has opportunities to be able to succeed. Next slide. Iowa's ICAP has 5 components that every student must go through. And they actually go through each of these every year. So again, starting in the 8th grade, they'll do exploration in each of these areas. I've broken them down, and the wording that you're going to see on the next set of slides comes directly from the code. And when you take a look at this, you're going to see, oh my gosh, there's so much there's language on here. There's so many words. I've done some bolding to some of these, and those are just kind of those key concepts. I'm not going to read all of the slides word for word, but since you're going to get the slide deck, you'll be able to go back in and say, oh, hey, you know what? The activities that we're doing, we're connecting students to self-understanding, or by providing this type of opportunity, we're connecting to career exploration. Next slide. So again, the first one is self-understanding. This is where students are engaging in some type of a developmentally appropriate assessment. Now, within that school system, we always talk to counselors, educators, whether it's a classroom teacher, an administrator, et cetera, about providing those developmentally appropriate opportunities. Every school district in Iowa is required to have a career information system. They have the ability to use those career information systems and the assessments that come in those particular systems, but they don't have to stay within that system for the entirety of the 5 years with a student's ICAP. So what we have seen is that we're seeing many districts that are kind of breaking outside of those lines. And they're having the opportunity where maybe in 8th grade, the student takes that career interest inventory within the system. But then in 9th grade, they do something that's outside of that. And then they go back to something in their junior year. And then by the senior year, maybe they take an assessment like StrengthsFinder, and they find out more about who they are and how they're going to work with others. So there's a lot of different ways that we have the ability to engage in these particular areas. With self-understanding, we're really doing just that, giving students the opportunity to understand who they are, what their skills are, and how those may contribute to a career that they're going to hold in their future. On the bottom of this slide, you'll notice that I have, the career information system, Future Ready Iowa, Career Coach, StrengthsFinder, just all different types of aptitude tests that we're seeing that are out there that students can access and have opportunities to. Next slide. The second component is career information, and this is where a student really researches about careers that they may be interested in. So many times those aptitudes are going to tell you, hey, you would be good at these careers. And then students can take a deeper dive and say, I really like, working with animals, but I hadn't really thought a lot about being a pet store owner. I was really more interested in veterinary science. But what does it mean to be a pet store owner? What would I have to do in those regards? So really having those opportunities to take a deep dive into that career research, and then have meaningful reflection on that also, where they're taking a look at, what are those wages? What is going to be the salary that a person could potentially have in that area? What is the employment outlook? Are they interested in something that there's a large growth rate? Are we seeing that there's a decline in those areas? What would the working conditions do? What is that going to look like for an individual within an area? Next slide. The third component is career exploration, and this is where students are going to be engaging in those relevant connections. So this could be anything from school-based instruction that takes place. So maybe you have an educator who's bringing in guest speakers, or they are running a cafe and students are getting exposed to that information. Or they're also going through and doing some face-to-face or virtual activities that are outside of their learning, which then connect back to work-based learning. Next slide. The fourth is post-secondary exploration. That in itself is kind of self-explanatory. Students are really taking a look at, according to these careers and my interests that I have, where do I want to go? What is my post-secondary exploration going to look like? We have things in Iowa that definitely help with that. The Golden Circle Career College Fair is one of those. It's our largest college fair that we have in Iowa. And what's unique about it is it also brings in not only the colleges and universities, but they do a good job in partnering with apprenticeships, buildings and trades, business and industry, military, et cetera. Next slide. And our final is the career and post-secondary decision. So students will actually go through and start making some decisions as they're completing their ICAP. With this, they're going to have relevant career exploration that will take place. They're going to take a look at, what does it mean to be admitted to a school? They're going to be completing applications, resumes, all of those really work-based components. Now, many of those activities they may complete within a class, and those activities then count toward the ICAP and what they're doing in that regard. Next slide. One of the last components that I really want to leave you with the ICAP idea is ICAP is an action verb, and one is always ICAPing. One is never done being ICAPed. And you may even think about that yourself. Is this going to be the final career that you end up in? Is this going to be the final job where you are? What are the activities? What are the things that even you individually know and can do, and you know about yourself? Like, I like working in this type of environment, or I really like these type of, I have this skill set and I believe it would fit well with this area. So even as adults, we're going through and doing really those essential components within ICAP, and finding out what are those passions, what are those career drivers for us. We want to continue to keep that process holistic and authentic, and you've seen that many times. So that's more than just students being within a career information system. They're getting outside of the box. And our really motto that we're running with individual career and academic planning is, instead of thinking outside of the box, get rid of the box. So what are the opportunities that students can be exposed to, and how can we help them on their way to becoming active citizens and having great careers as they go out and leave our school system? Are there any questions at this time? So this component really connects in with career and technical education. As I mentioned, CTE follows the career clusters, and within those career clusters, there's all different types of jobs that students will have the opportunity to be exposed to. So ICAP fits really well in that CTE framework. All right, Dennis, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Well, thanks, Katie. Again, as you think of things, questions, we'll have plenty of time at the end for any questions that you all might have, but we just wanted to leave time between each section in case there was something that immediately came up for you. So my portion of the presentation is to give you an overview of Iowa education, and most specifically, career and technical education. As we've already said, the three of us are from the Department of Education, and the department is broken up into three areas: the Office of the Director, and Dr. Ann Lebo is the director of the department. We have the Office of Learning and Results, and then we have the Office of Operations and Initiatives, and that is where we are housed within the Division of Community Colleges and Workforce Preparation. In our division, we have two bureaus, which is our Bureau of Career and Technical Education and the Bureau of Community Colleges. In this, I just wanted to provide you with the list of staff that make up the CTE Bureau team, primarily for if you have specific questions about a content area as you're doing your work, you can reach out to these folks or whatever. I'm the Bureau Chief. Jane Bradley is our administrative consultant. You've met Katie. Matt Eddy is our consultant for Ag, Food, Natural Resources. Kel Hutchings is our consultant for Applied Sciences, Technology, Engineering, and Manufacturing. You've met Christy. And then Justin Lewis will be joining us in June. He will actually be our consultant for Business Marketing and Information Solutions, and Christy will be taking over work-based learning full-time. So we're excited about putting full-time effort into work-based learning. And of course, Christy's going to share work-based learning with you a little later. Jeff Fletcher is our consultant for CTE accountability. Amy Vebral is our consultant for Perkins claims. Chris Zurich is our consultant for career and technical student organizations, and I'm going to talk a little bit about them later on. Jen Rachi is our consultant for Senior Year Plus and Career Academies. Jeanette Thomas is our consultant for Equity Initiatives. The next two gentlemen are in our veterans education area, and they're not directly aligned with CTE, but they are part of our bureau, and they oversee all aspects of veterans education. And then Rebecca Griglione is our secretary. So this is our staff. We're small, but we're mighty. And again, I provided this information so you know if you have specific questions about some aspect of CTE, you can reach out to these folks. Just as a quick overview of Iowa education, there are 330 school districts. during the 2019-2020 school year, there were 490,094 students K through 12. The graduation rate for the class of 2019 was 91.6%. The class of 2018, 65% enrolled in post-secondary education or training within 1 year of graduation. And then we have 15 community college districts in the state. So regarding Iowa career and technical education, our CTE programs are delivered through middle schools, comprehensive high schools, and community colleges. And within community colleges, we have 19 regional centers, and I'll talk a little bit about our regional centers in a little bit. And then just to note that school districts are required to offer 12 units of CTE coursework within 4 of the 6 CTE service areas. And this slide shows you what the CTE service, the 6 CTE service areas are, and then you can see the corresponding career pathways within each of those areas. We have a vision for Iowa career and technical education, and I like to share this with folks so that they understand, you know, that we're really trying to be focused around our work. And this vision was developed a couple of years ago when we had a fairly large committee of folks that came in to assist the Bureau with developing our Carl Perkins state plan that we have to develop for our federal funding, our Perkins funding. And so this vision was developed around this CTE Works theme, and we have 3 components. CTE Works for learners, making sure that each learner has a real option for college and careers. And then CTE Works for business, because we want to make sure that each learner has the future-ready skills that employers need for today and tomorrow, because we need to make sure that our future workforce is ready and prepared. And then CTE Works for Iowa, because we want to make sure that each learner has access to relevant learning that connects the classroom to careers across Iowa. And our overall goal for CTE is to ensure that we have consistent and equitable access to high quality career and technical education for all learners. And I underline high quality because this is what we're really striving for. We want to make sure that every CTE course and program is considered to be high quality and that students are prepared for their next step, whether it's going straight to the workforce, going to an apprenticeship, going on to community college, or going on to 4-year university. So these are 4 specific strategies that were developed to help us achieve the vision for career and technical education. Of course, the first one is to advance the future-ready Iowa goal to strengthen our talent pipeline and ensure that all Iowans have training and education required to succeed in college and careers. We want to make sure we have a cohesive career and technical education system so that learners can flow seamlessly to the right program at the right time with the necessary skills needed on their path to a career. And then we want to build stronger relationships between our education partners, our professional organizations, and most specifically our business and industry. And then finally, we want to ensure that CTE programs and our career and technical student organizations reflect the diversity of our learners, business and industry in the community. So this next section is kind of the data piece that I wanted to share with you. And I just pulled a few slides from our annual condition of secondary career and technical education report we presented to the State Board of Education at their meeting earlier this month. And some of these slides were what we presented to that group at that time. And we thought this might be helpful for you to understand the breadth and depth of career and technical education. So this first slide shows secondary CTE enrollment and the participation rate. And our report looks at a 5-year scan. So this particular report was from the actual year of 2016 through 2020. So as you can see from this slide, in 2020, we had 100,558 students enrolled in at least one CTE course, which is the highest in the past 5 years, although we're somewhat rather flat, but we're still seeing a slight uptick in the number of students taking one CTE course. The shorter bar, the purple bar that you see here on this slide, are the number of college credit contracted CTE students during the past 5 years. So in 2020, you can see we had 19,576 students, or 19.5% of the total CTE enrollment that took at least one college credit contracted CTE course, which is about 3.3% increase from the year before. Again, you can see we're pretty flat on that, but we're starting to continue to see an uptick in that as well. And then the second chart on this slide is our participation rate. So you can see from this, our participation rate varies from around 66% overall total if you look at the 5-year spread. So we have about 66% of our students participating in current technical education. This is just some charts that show the characteristics of secondary CTE students. And as you can see from the first chart, 77.6% of our students in CTE are white. Within the 22.4% in 2020, Hispanic students comprise the largest minority group, averaging 48.3%, followed by Black students averaging 24.9%, and then students who reported 2 or more races averaged around 14.3%. The second chart summarizes the enrollment of secondary students by gender, and as you can see, we have more male students enrolled in current technical education than females, but females continues to grow a little bit across the way. And then finally, one of our key statistics is we like to see what the proportion of secondary CTE students is that is eligible for the National School Lunch Program. And as you can see in 2020, that was 39.5%. On this chart, you can see our programs by service area, and I apologize for you can't see the service areas as well. I wasn't able to get the slide fixed properly, but as you can see, our largest service area was the applied science, technology, engineering, and manufacturing with 595 programs. And then that's followed by human services programs, business, and so forth and so on. And you can see this is the 5-year spread. So just kind of see where our programming lies within the secondary CTE world. These two pieces from the report, the first chart shows enrollment by grade level. Our enrollment typically is higher in grade 9 and decreases a little bit as you go down through each grade. And then the second chart just summarizes enrollment by service area and displays the change in enrollment by service area since 2016. Interesting to note that human services was the highest service area with the highest enrollment, and last year we had 54,408 students that participated in human services, and then that was followed by our applied science, technology, engineering, and manufacturing areas. And then the last data slide that I wanted to show was our course taking, both secondary and college contracted courses together. And so you can see that between 2016 and 2017, approximately 44% of our students participated in CTE program, took one course in an academic year. And then that group drops as the number of course taking, as you can see, drops off as well. So fewer students are taking more courses is basically what this slide depicts. So I'd encourage you to take a look at our annual report for secondary career and technical education, because there's a lot more information in there that may be helpful to you as you do your work in the after school space. The next section I wanted to share were just what we consider, and this information is also in our report, is around what we would consider to be emerging areas in career and technical education. And the first area, which I mentioned earlier, were our career and technical student organizations. And our career and technical student organizations are an integral component of the secondary and post-secondary CTE classrooms. One of the things that's somewhat unique about career and technical student organizations is they're considered to be co-curricular, which means that they are a lot of the instruction around career and technical student organizations takes place in the actual classroom. So there's a lot of leadership things that take place, as well as competitive type events, and many of those things happen within the classroom. Although there are some things that are done outside the classroom, such as fundraising and different things like that the students participating in. But for the most part, they're considered to be co-curricular. One of the things that we did in our state plan, our Iowa Perkins state plan, was that we require every secondary CTE program by 2024, 2025 to have the appropriate current technical student organization aligned with their CTE program. And so far, our current membership continues to climb, and for all 8 of our current technical student organizations, our enrollment's around 25,539 students. And these are the active secondary CTSOs that we have in Iowa. There's 8 of them. And you can link to each of the student organizations on this slide. I mentioned a little bit about our regional centers, and they're a key component for success of current technical education in Iowa. The regional centers are a structure wherein career academies are delivered, and the whole idea around the regional center is to perhaps offer current technical education programs that might be more costly to replicate in a number of high schools. And so students come to one location for an auto tech program, for instance, or maybe a culinary arts program that may not be able to be replicated as easily in a comprehensive high school. And so to be considered a regional center, they must include 4 career academies, and they have to serve either a combined 120 students from 2 school districts or a minimum of 4 school districts that's into these. And in our statute, career academies are defined here as a program structure consisting of secondary and post-secondary career and technical education coursework, which includes concurrent enrollment coursework, as well as work-based learning experiences. In 2020, we had 19 regional centers that provided 183 career academy programs for 6,150 high school students from 110 school districts. And you can see here the career academies by service area, with obviously those 71 of those being in the applied science area. I would like to note here too that we're starting to see growth in this area. We have the Career Academy Incentive Fund, which provides up to $1 million grant to community colleges that are looking to start a regional center. Within the past year, we've awarded $4 million grants to areas. So we're starting to see expansion of these regional centers across the state. So we're very excited about that, and we should continue to see these numbers go up as we go along. And this is just simply a map of where the regional centers are located. And they're actually indicated on this slide by the green stars. And then the last section that I wanted to cover was what we consider to be joint enrollment, and that's making sure we have the opportunity for all students to earn college credit while they're in high school. And with this report, we had 51,800 high school students participated in joint enrollment. And it's interesting to note that 2 out of every 5 community college students are high school students. 63.8% of the joint enrollment is in arts and sciences, and 36.2% is in career and technical education. And the options for joint enrollment you can see here is the PSEO, the contracted concurrent enrollment, and then independent enrollment in a college course as a tuition paying student. So that is a very quick and dirty overview of career and technical education. Does anybody have any specific questions about any of this information?
Dennis, we did have a question that was dropped in the chat. This is from Paul. He wanted to know if there were any theories as to why there was a drop over the years. He would have thought there would have been an increase. And Paul, please feel free to unmute and come in and provide a little bit more explanation past the chat there if you'd like.
Nope, you just hit it. It just struck me when I saw that screenshot. It just seemed to me that there's, at least in our case, I guess I'm seeing an increase, but I'm just curious as and what the reason is. And I think Katie responded also with some of the graduation requirements, which I agree with that, but I wasn't sure if there would be other things as well that are keeping kids from.
Yeah. You know, that's one of the things when I presented to the state board a couple of weeks ago, that observation was made that we're pretty flat on a lot of our indicators, and we're not seeing like a huge amount of growth. I'm not sure that we've dug in specifically to the data yet to see, although that's one of the things that we're starting to look at. One of the areas, for instance, that we're starting to put some emphasis on is like CTE, teacher recruitment and retention. You know, if we don't have teachers in the classrooms to teach, then it becomes a challenge, you know, to continue to grow current technical education if you don't have proper staff to do that. We're hoping with our career and technical student organizations that that may entice students to be more interested in participating in career and technical education. And like Katie said, you know, some of the academic requirements I think are preventing students. I think continuing to increase the concurrent enrollment offerings in career and technical education will help that, as well as I think the making more offerings available through our regional centers will definitely help us boost enrollment.
Well, let me ask you this question then, because I'm looking at work-based learning, and we I guess the idea is that it's closely tied to then career and technical education courses. So when I see that over that decrease in number, I see that also as a challenge to grow work-based learning. So my question is this: are there any requirements for a student to participate in a work-based learning experience? Do they have to be enrolled in a CTE program? Hypothetically, I've got some juniors who maybe they're not specifically focused on, let's say, medical health, or they're interested in it, but they still want to learn more. Can the work-based learning experience still live outside of being a participant in a CTE program?
I'm going to let Christy chime in here on that.
It can, Paul, and when I start going through this next part, I think it'll help explain what our intended goals are, and then other ways to approach it. Work-based learning.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Really appreciate the input and the questions. Very helpful for us to think about.
I do have another Perkins related question. I'm just thinking about one of the as we're developing our Perkins grant for next year, and everything we've done in the local needs assessment really points toward work-based learning.
Mhm.
And as we write our grant in Perkins, obviously we want to put funding toward that. Because of this grant, I think Council Bluffs is really able to really move the needle on the work-based program. If I'm using the grant to push that, will there be a concern from you or from anyone at DOE when they look at our grant and they see that we're really not in the Perkins grant, we're not spending a lot of money on work-based learning. I don't want the impression to be that we're not doing anything. We've got the ability to use the grant to do that. Do I need to add something to the information on the grant to make the readers aware that we're not doing it, we're just using grant funds to make this happen?
Well, with Perkins 5, of course, one of the new requirements was the comprehensive local needs assessment. And what we've said is that we like for the majority of the funding to be driven towards the priorities for the local needs assessment that were identified in the local needs assessment. And then the step that we took, and I believe you were involved in, participate in our regional meetings that we just finished up on a couple of weeks ago. And work-based learning happened to be the #1 priority that came about of all of those discussions among 13 of the RPPs. That was the #1 work-based learning. So I think that I'm not going to say that you have to spend all your money towards that, but it would be helpful, if you really put some of your dollars towards that, if I understand specifically what you're asking.
Yes, I just didn't want anybody, because we have the 21st Century Grant to really carry the water to move our work-based learning program. I can, it's not a problem to include work-based learning in our Perkins grant. But I just thought that we've got the luxury of this grant to move a lot of this.
Sure.
Will that allow me then to dedicate Perkins funds to other things?
Yeah.
I guess that's the
Yeah, I
question.
think so, because they're like, again, you need to go back to your comprehensive local needs assessment, and when you did that a year ago, those are the things that you really need to focus your funds towards. So I don't know where work-based learning fell in that for you.
Oh, it was up there. It was definitely
Okay.
up there. So our view is that the vision of what needs to be done, without a doubt, no question, it's the funding sources that we're required to use to make that happen. If I want to use the 21st Century Grant to make that happen for the majority of that vision.
Yeah, and I think that's fine.
I guess I don't want anybody to think at the state to say, wait a minute, Council Bluffs they were saying work-based learning, but yet they're not spending any money in Perkins.
Yeah.
We are. It's just not being used at Perkins. It's still getting done. The vision is still in place. It's just the spending isn't happening through Perkins. That was, I guess, I didn't want anybody to look at us and say, Council Bluffs, you're talking about both sides of your mouth. You're saying it's important, but you're not spending any money in Perkins.
Sure.
That's where I wanted to make sure there was clarity.
Okay, sure. Anything else?
Just again, following this kind of train of thought or whatnot, I do want to invite Vic to just jump in here too. Vic, if there's anything that needs to be said or stated regarding the financial support for out-of-school components of this.
Well, the good news is we finally have our account number or account guidance that just came in yesterday. So I'll be getting more clarification on that, but this is for at-risk kids that are normally in a 21st Century program to have additional CTE opportunities. We do provide, that's one of our things we do at a high school level program. And then for, middle school, we provide those CTE experiences. And, I think this has just given us more resources to make sure that we don't have kids falling through the cracks because they don't have access. for whatever reason, to some of the CTE opportunities. So I think it's a win-win for us.
Yeah, and I would like to say too, one of the things that one of our national associations, Advanced CTE, just put out a 5-year strategic plan, and with the idea being that states could take that and develop their strategies around some of the things that were identified nationally. And one of those was finding, new partners and finding those partners that haven't traditionally been those that we would partner with. And this whole 21st century thing really falls in line for us with that is one of those partners that we hadn't traditionally tapped into in the past, and really excited about the possibilities here and perhaps it'll help us get more kids into the CTE programs.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions from attendees today?
I have one last one, then I promise I'll shut up.
You're fine.
Something, Dennis, you were talking about the community colleges and what they're doing. And I know my question, I guess, is as we grow our work-based learning program, and Delisa's already, she's been here a week and we're on the cusp of having an HVAC registered apprenticeship going. So she's already killing it. My question is, as we're growing ours and Iowa Western they're doing some things, I imagine we'll have to work with the intermediary, that would be Natalie Harris. But I want to make sure that we're not stepping on each other's toes as we're both trying to grow this. And so I guess my question is where are the community colleges also in this growth? And I guess specifically for us, Iowa Western, is that just us just reaching out to Natalie or the intermediary, or what advice would you give us to make sure that we're not kind of bumping up against each other or competing with each other in some way as we're trying to communicate with businesses and open some doors for work-based learning experiences? Any thoughts on that?
I would say Natalie, first talk to her. And Paul, I can follow up with you as well, because this is not just you and your location. It is a statewide component we need to remember as we move work-based learning forward, but I can definitely follow up with you. But yeah, Natalie is a great place to start.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Christy, I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind dropping your email into the chat, just so that the other sites, because we also have Boys and Girls Club of Central Iowa and Olwine on the line, that if they need to maybe reach out to you to find out who their intermediary contact is, that might be a good resource. And if I'm speaking out of turn, please let me know.
And no, Christy's information's on the slide
at
the end as well. We've got everybody's contact information, but she can put it in for you.
I just put it in the chat for you.
Okay.
Thank you. It's very exciting that everybody wants to talk about work-based learning. So let's talk about work-based learning.
You're on, Christy.
So again, my name is Christy Valesky with Iowa Department of Education. I oversee work-based learning, which includes the Iowa Intermediary Network. And for the time being, I'm still overseeing business and marketing educators until our new consultant starts this June. As an added bonus, I have to say, Paul and Delisa, it's nice to see your faces after communicating so much over Zoom. So Dennis, why don't you go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay. So work-based learning, depending on who you talk to, you're going to get a variety of different components. But it's this idea that we're connecting our content to reality. We're no longer separating theoretical, just talk about it, then wait till you graduate and then actually do it and see if you like it. What we're saying is, let's bridge the two. Rather than creating hypothetical all the time, why not create these meaningful connections for students? You learn the content and then you see the connections with our industry partners. So that's the key with work-based learning, is that we are connecting with industry directly. So when it comes to Perkins 5, what we chose as a state is let's really push and guide our districts to really provide those in-depth opportunities at employer sites. And there's some guidance, and I'll drop in the website that you can look at as far as more information with Perkins 5. But really our whole goal is let's move forward. Let's really connect it for students so they can see what it is that they're learning and how it applies to the real world while doing some career exploration pieces and then making decisions from there, which all connects back to the ICAP that Katie was talking about there as well, as those conversations that follow. So they're no longer just two separate components. And to come, Paul, what you had asked earlier as far as does it have to be connected to content? It doesn't always have to be connected to content. Here at the department, we see the value of really connecting it with content. It's just if those other opportunities are provided, who's making those intentional conversations? Who's following up so that students don't just have this separate piece, but that they make those decisions afterwards? So that's where I would say connecting it back to some meaningful conversations that should come out in the ICAP. Dennis, do you want to go? Oh, thank you. So again, work-based learning is a state priority. It's what we chose for Perkins 5, Future Ready Iowa. Like, we really want to ensure that these students have ample opportunities, and it's no longer dependent on the zip code that you grow up in, that all students have those access to those opportunities. On the next slide here, this is one of the big things that I'm trying to do as much as possible is really communicate out where and who provides these opportunities. So as Paul had briefly mentioned, Natalie Harris, she is involved with the Iowa Intermediary Network, which is housed out of all 15 community colleges, and they provide those work-based learning opportunities for students. And you'll see it's those awareness opportunities, which is really just starting to dip your toe in. So having a speaker come in and talk, or having those intentional conversations, or an industry tour. When it comes to exploration, having a job shadow, those pieces. Now, the intermediary will be helping to connect those partners in the training pieces. So those internships and apprenticeships, they can be that connector, because at the end of the day, we're all using the same businesses. So we want to make sure business and industry aren't overwhelmed with requests from all different types of people, that we're streamlining it. And that's the beauty of our intermediaries, is they are working with industry partners to collect what it is that they are comfortable integrating and providing for students, and then matching those with what the school district needs and wants for their students to have those exploration pieces and awareness pieces built into those opportunities. Also on here is the clearinghouse for work-based learning under Future Ready Iowa, which are those project-based components, and those are available on the website, where a teacher can request a project that's connected to industry to, again, bridge that connection of what the students are learning to a real-world example. All of those are free. CTE educators are much involved when it comes to the exploration pieces, a lot of times with those school-based enterprises that Katie had briefly touched on earlier, where they're doing those school-run stores. And I know that O-Line has one of those stores as well, that students can really develop out those initial professional development skills. Now, one of the websites I want to put here in the chat is the Connection Lab for the Iowa Intermediary Network. And this was something new this year because of COVID, but it was a positive because of COVID, because it transcends those barriers depending on where you are at. So now you have access to highly qualified professionals from across the state on specific CTE topics. And the thing is, all of them are free. All of them are available on demand for students, for educators, and for anyone working with after-school programs. Even if you're not an educator, you can go request those downloads to showcase with students, and it would be the equivalent of a speaker as far as engagement, because it's kind of that initial connection. Now, in this virtual environment, they are connected to standards in the CTE areas. However, there's something to take away from all of those. So built into that are intermediaries who are experts working with careers, built-in components to really understand what it is like with that career path. Okay, I know this is a lot of information. And especially with work-based learning. Dennis, you want to go to the next slide? And so this is what I briefly talked about, and I went ahead and put in the Connection Lab in there. The virtual events, the live ones, the last one is on Thursday, so tomorrow this week, which is a tour when it comes to heavy operators, but all the rest are available in the Connections Lab. Okay, go ahead and go to next. Work-based learning coordinators are responsible for overseeing our high school internships, and for many districts, they're also that individual to check in on behalf of the school district for those apprenticeships. just to do a check-in with the student to make sure everything is going smoothly. Work-based learning coordinators are essential for making sure that we're reducing the liability for the school district. And they really are that in-between person who's helping to coach not only the student, but also the industry partner to provide these high-quality experiences that not only develop those professional skills that are those transferable skills that industry really wants to hear, but also developing and ensuring that a student has an extensive experience to put together a professional portfolio and help them develop on to the next stage, whether that's full-time employment with the organization or a different organization, an apprenticeship, any other sort of training, or a 4-year, 2-year institution. And the Iowa Work-Based Learning Coordinators is a great group. They put on an annual conference every year. It's a great way for people to come together and just share ideas. How do you overcome these different components and so on? Okay, the next slide. The apprenticeship programs, please go through the Earn and Learn. They are responsible for the development, the oversight with those pieces. We think it's a highly valuable opportunity. Students walk away with a credential. They have extensive experience and an on-site mentor. Another great opportunity for students to really learn and engage. And the next one. Before we jump off of that, I do want to put in the website to the department's work-based learning, which has more information on Perkins 5, some of the back-end pieces, as well as some resources. So recently on the training page, which is the subpage of the work-based learning, there is a new training plan and training agreement that were recently updated and approved, which better align with standards-based grading for districts to be able to kind of plug and implement. So there's a lot of information with work-based learning. There's a lot more information that will be coming out. So please reach out if you have any questions about work-based learning. What if this? Where do I go for this? I'm happy to be your connector. What questions do you have about work-based learning?
Hey, Christy, can you think of a couple school districts, in your opinion, that in Iowa that are just absolutely nailing their work-based learning program in terms of their vision, what they're doing, the results? Somebody that maybe we could reach out to ask them, what are you doing? How are you doing it? Just to kind of use them as a guide.
Yeah, so I'm going to take it off of your size here. I would say maybe a Norwalk, Oskaloosa would be great school districts, and I can email you the coordinators to reach out to. Ashley Preekset is actually the president of Iowa Work-Based Learning Coordinators, and she is running the Norwalk program. And they went from doing some of it to really she's full-time working on this because they see the value in really expanding those opportunities for students. Oskaloosa, they have a trimester program. Kristen Bandy, she's the former Iowa Work-Based Learning Coordinator president. She's another key person because they do it slightly different, but also have some key outcomes. I know that she's had students who walk away with a pilot's license. So there's a lot of different ways to approach it.
Any other questions for Christy or Dennis or Katie? Okay. So I think one kind of thing that I would just maybe add to the conversation in closing this part of the presentation today is just simply that if you are a community-based organization like our friends from Boys and Girls Club of Central Iowa on here, you may feel a bit overwhelmed at this point because it seems like our school districts seem to have a pretty good working knowledge and understanding of career and technical education. I would strongly suggest that you take a look at these slides that we're providing to you and just thinking about how you as a community-based organization can align your work with the content areas that were shared with the slide. And then I would also say that this is the reason that Vic, the Iowa After School Alliance team, and myself, of course, are here for you specifically. Now, obviously, Council Bluffs and Oline, the same is true for you as well. Feel free to access us at any time. But as a person who kind of grew up in that community-based organization mentality, I can see that this might be a little bit daunting for you. But again, please feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to help make some connections and do support your discussion and planning as well. Any other questions for our presenters?
I just had a couple of quick questions, or maybe, I don't know, a comment. So I'm looking at the Iowa Work-Based Learning Guide, through the links that you provided here. It's dated 2017. So then I looked at the Educators Cooperative. It's dated 2019. Is there any current work or plans for current revisions of this work, or are there more recent guide? I'm just thinking how much industry has changed in the last 4 or 5 years, and just looking and feeling that, yes, we're overwhelmed, but also behind. And I know we're always doing future work with this. So we're not looking at employees today. Obviously, we're looking at employees 10, 15 years from now. Can you speak to maybe the DE's role or work or future of work-based learning?
Well, I just can't seem to do enough fast enough. Yes, Tim,
That's everyone, so don't.
that is something. I think that guide is a great start, but it definitely needs to be updated. That's some conversations that we've had, but that's also something that takes time. Currently waiting for the process internal. I went through and created an internship guide, which is like a step-by-step process of internal conversations to have, because there's no one right way to approach it. But that, unfortunately, I mean, it just takes time to get that stuff out. I'm happy to pass that along to you once that has gotten the okay and been placed on the website.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like just to add to that. One of the things that we just really started working on, and now that Christy's going full-time work-based learning, we've started an internal committee. And one of the things that Christy and Joe are working on is we're starting to develop kind of a strategic plan for work-based learning, so that we're being, really thoughtful and very strategic around the work-based learning and everything that's associated with that. And this work-based learning guide, Tim, that you reference, is definitely one of those things on that list. But we really know that we want to get really laser light focused on work-based learning. So we're working internally to develop a strategic plan, so we're really focused.
Hey, Tim, I just wanted to throw something out. Here's something that we did when we first started doing this. I referenced the state work-based learning guide, which was a huge help. And then you start to look around and see other schools are doing some things. Every school has its own DNA. So every school has something different. And one of the examples I found was Pella had a really good example of a process, I guess. And so I kind of, by hitting different school districts, you kind of download and look at what they do, and you start taking bits and pieces from what other districts are doing. You meld them in your own, and I think it kind of grows from there, getting to the pinnacle of what the Department of Ed has in there is like, that's like the top. But it's the steps to get there. And sometimes that's what I learned anyway in my process, is just look at other school districts. Pella was the example that I could think of that I used as a model to kind of grow ours.
So Paul, real quickly, I mean, I know we don't have a lot of time, but what makes Pella unique? So I know Stacy over in Oskaloosa and kind of the work they've done there. And I love their kind of almost Iowa Big approach, but what's unique about maybe Pella that we need to be kind of zeroing in on?
Theirs really focused, and I was looking to grow us. Our focus was industrial technology and manufacturing, and I knew that Pella was really killing it on what they were doing. So that's where I knew, rather than starting with all of our programs, let's really kind of start to peel back the layers on one, really get something going in one, and then develop our model from there. And so that was the one that I looked at, because they were doing so much in the manufacturing and the industrial technology area. They've got it's online. You can even search for it. It's Pella. It might be just a apprenticeship guide or something like that. I could send it to you too, but it had some documents. It had some forms and some ideas that when I looked at that, they kind of resonated with how it might work with our school. And so that's kind of how I went about it.
Paul, I like what you said, and I just want to reemphasize that, and Tim, going forward, is what I usually say is just figure out the first step. Don't try and do everything all at one time because it'll become overwhelming. But what's like one step that you can take first and see those results and then add it in as you go?
So
I
what
like what you
got
said,
from that
Tom.
was move Vermeer and Pella windows to old wine. Old wine window kind of has a ring to it. I mean, I just something to think about, you know.
Let me know how that
that.
goes, Tim. I like that idea. Let me know how it goes.
I'll keep you in the loop. Yeah. We have an airport, so I'm just saying, you know, that's a big contention there. So
Yeah.
Access, yeah.
A couple more things that connect to this particular part of the conversation. Paul, if you have that guide and want to send it to me, I'm happy to send it out to everyone in the email list so that we have that resource in common. So that'll be the first thing. And then secondly, I would just also say that in our connecting meetings that we'll be having that will be required for this grant, we will also have time for each of your sites to be able to share out your thoughts, your ideas, your best practices, because again, this is the first year of this 5-year grant. We really do need to be able to lean on and support each other because again, you know, if Tim, you're doing something in Old Wine and it just goes fantastic, we'd like you to share that. Likewise, you know, maybe Paul tried something or Nikki tried something that didn't go so high, you know, so again, doing some of that best practice and sharing as well. And Paul, I see that link that you dropped into the chat, so thank you for that. Any other questions for Dennis, Katie, and Christy today? Okay, so thank you so much to the Career and Technical Education team at the Department of Education. We really appreciate you spending some time with us today, sharing your knowledge, putting together that great presentation. You are absolutely welcome to stay around for the next just few minutes. I have just a few documents that I want to share with people while I have you on the call today. And then we'll go ahead and we'll wrap up way before our 2-hour time allotment was today. So again, thank you so much for that. And I'll look for the slide deck from you so that I can share that out with the team.
And thanks everybody. Really appreciate your time and don't hesitate to reach out to any of us if you have any questions or need assistance with anything.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Again, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So sites. Just a couple of things that I wanted to share with you today while I have you on this call. Thank you to everyone who's been very responsive when it comes to emails and questions and reviewing documents and things like that. Very much appreciate it. After this call today, I will be following up with an email that will have the recording link, the slide deck, and the chat file, as well as the next 3 documents that I'm going to be sharing on the screen. So we had talked about a monthly reporting template, and it occurred to us that that's just way too much. We don't technically need to have that done monthly. Now, the one caveat that I would say for that is there is a possibility that if Vic has immediate questions that need to be addressed from the feds, and or if you have significant staffing changes to your program, that will be taken care of through email, probably in a monthly fashion. And again, there could be some of those questions, particularly as we get started. So just try to be aware of that. So our first document here, and again, you'll see that it's still under review, so I'll need to make a couple of more edits here. This is the OSTCP quarterly data collection template. So we're thinking that these will be submitted July, September, January, and March. It's going to require you to just provide some really general contact information, noting some changes. You'll see that I have some asterisks here that I just want to point out to a couple of your attentions. The first is, did you have new key personnel? The second one is additional staff hires, and the third is community partners. And I'm going to scroll to the asterisks for just a moment. Again, your key personnel, those are going to be required to be sent to Vic through an email just monthly. And again, I don't know if any of you are anticipating major key personnel changes, but just keep us informed of that. Also, those changes to your direct service staff should be reported monthly, and that'll be done through email as well. And then finally, just as a general reminder, when it pertains to your community partners, this document is for your OSTCP project partners, but please remember to add those partners to your general community partnership template for 21st century overall as well. So we're also going to be asking you about programs started or ended. So did you kick off a manufacturing project? Did it end? Did you have a culinary experience? Did it end? Things of that nature. The number of youth enrolled in the program, and then your average daily attendance. So thinking about just this project specifically. And again, this document, you will have the ability to turn it into a Google form if that works better for you, or you can just simply put this into this Word document and send it back via email. We'll also be asking you to share some of your successes, barriers, highlights, obstacles, and then if you have additional questions or if you need technical assistance. So again, this will be done monthly. The monthly emails will be for key personnel change, key direct service change, and then response to VIC's questions from the feds. I'm going to pause for just a moment and see if anybody has any questions.
Well, Crystal, I want to add a couple of things here. If you don't have anything to report as far as staff changes, you don't have to send me an email every month that says there's been no change. Only if there is a change, we need to know that right away. That's why we have that for monthly. Another thing is, if something great happens, for example, let's say that tomorrow Nikki goes down to Google, the data center, and says, hey, we've got some kids that would like to do an experience. And Google says, hey, what we'll do is, we'll take half a dozen kids and we'll offer them a computer science scholarship if they complete our training. Wow, that's pretty cool. And, something like that comes up, send it to me right away. And I'm always sharing stuff with the feds. And from this meeting, there were a couple of links that were shared. I sent those with a little narrative so that we're feeding them information on a regular basis. And they know that, the investment in Iowa was well worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so any questions about the quarterly data collection template?
In terms of who fills that out, is that something that we can parse out as far as Council Bluffs, for example? Nikki's got some pieces, Delisa might have some pieces. Is that okay to do that? Or does it need to be, can we have it one document and share it and submit it? Or does it need to come from one person?
I think how you handle it internally is entirely up to you. It may be easier if I just know that this document is always going to be coming from Delisa or whatever, or whoever, I should say, not whatever. So maybe, determine internally how you guys will complete it. And then I do think that it might be beneficial to have just kind of a centrally designated person to be able to do the actual sending. Okay. And how it is to be sent is through an email sent to Vic, and then CC me, because of course I will also be tracking the documentation for the grant itself.
And is this a draft format yet, or will you be sending us the final? Or maybe we already got it.
Sending you the final. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions?
On these things, the program director, which for Council Bluffs would be Nikki, is responsible for us to get it. Now, if you guys make an arrangement in Council Bluffs that says, Nikki says, I'm going to delegate this to somebody else, I'm okay with that.
Okay. All right, so the next document I wanted to share with you is what we discussed at our April 30th call, I believe was the date, and that is that we will be doing an annual survey. What you're seeing on your screen right now is kind of a copy of what will be loaded into a Survey Monkey. A link will be sent out to you, and you can go ahead and complete the responses at that time. This is going to really kind of get to the heart of those G5 requirements that Vic needs to put into that system. So I'm going to do this very quickly because I've also put together a tracking document that I'll send out that will hopefully help you to kind of track as you go along, so that when you do get the link for this annual OSTCP survey, it's literally just as simple as looking at your spreadsheet and popping the information into the SurveyMonkey link. So right out of the gate, we have some site or identifying information, pretty standard. We have some responses that will require a numerical response. So again, the number of unduplicated high school and middle school youth, combined total number of youth served, a breakdown of what your kids are doing in which of the avenues that are identified by the grant, and so on. And again, I'll show the spreadsheet in just a moment. We'll also need you to collect some demographic information on the youth. That's just for, again, reporting purposes. One thing that I would point out here is that we are asking at the Fed's request for your community youth crime rate to be reported. So you may want to do some thinking about how or who you need to contact to get that information. We're also going to be asking you about professional development and providing some feedback or response to that. And then some open-ended responses. So again, our successes, our obstacles, technical assistance. And then because the Iowa After School Alliance has been tasked with developing kind of a toolkit or a guidebook for anybody who's interested in starting their own OSTCP program, we're also looking for you to add your top 3 pieces of advice or lessons learned so that we can share that information out with other sites. So I'm going to switch over to the spreadsheet because, again, what I've done is I've attempted to put all of that into this spreadsheet with multiple tabs so that you can easily just pop this information in. So our first tab is what we'll need you to enter, which are essentially the numerical information. This will be for specifically the G5 data entry. You'll notice that I have some formulas already in place. So if you put in, 12 high schoolers and 10 middle schoolers, this is automatically going to add for you. And then we're also going to be able to have it formulated out that you will not have to figure your cumulative percentage of students. It's going to do that work for you. So again, here's that information. The next tab is for demographics, and I have included a drop down so that you can align your responses with the responses that are asked within the system and or that are asked typically. Professional development, I've provided a sample based on today's lesson. So this is a document that you can populate. So here we have the date, we had our title, which was Introduction to OSTCP, What Makes a High Quality CTE Program. Here are our presenters, which were, of course, Dennis, Katie, and Christy. Here's where you can mark that you or your team attended. And you see, again, we have a drop down, yes or no. And then just a space for some feedback to collect some thoughts so that we can have that for your availability when it comes time to do that survey. And then last but not least, a page for those open-ended questions. And again, just trying to think ahead of when I used to manage a general 21st century grant, I would use these tracking documents along the way, update it monthly or whatever made sense to me, or maybe jot down a couple of quick notes so that later when I was completing the annual survey, I wasn't sitting there like, what do I say now? So again, hopefully this document will be beneficial or useful to you. You do not have to use this document. We just wanted to be able to provide you with another tool that could be useful. So questions?
Crystal, I'd like to speak about the youth crime.
Okay.
That's something that Iowa alone is working with the feds on. And I'm hoping to parlay that into some additional funding down the road. Council Bluffs has already sent me data for this year. But some of our other grantees, they may need to contact their local police department or sheriff's department, because all law enforcement agencies keep crime statistics and they keep it by hours. So it's pretty easy for them to pull. And they also do it by neighborhoods, I think, as well. So, they can get that data. It'll look different from every community, but that's okay. But so far from Iowa, we've got data from Council Bluffs that when we've put in an after-school program, there's been a 50% reduction in youth crime. And that's pretty significant when you consider they spend $28 billion keeping kids under 18 incarcerated and only $1 billion on after-school programs. So, we're not spending money on prevention like we should be, and this data is going to be vital to us, starting that conversation on a national level.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I'm going to stop sharing screen just so I can see everybody's faces. And I want to check out the chat just very quickly to see if anybody dropped a question in there. I don't see anything. So again, any thoughts, questions about the templates, the spreadsheet? Again, I have just a little bit more tweaking to do, but I'll get these sent out to you. It'll probably be later this afternoon. That will give me a chance to download and upload the video link as well. Okay. Well, folks, I think we can go ahead and wrap up for the day. You have our contact information. Please reach out with any questions that you might have. And with that being said, I hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday. So take care, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.